Right, so welcome everyone to this session, and apologies again for the glitch. It seems that it might have been my internet, but I hope things will go well in the rest of the session. I see we've also been joined by my colleague Dineshri Mudli. She will be joining. She's the core customer consultant based in Durban in South Africa. She's also joining, and I'm sure she'll also participate later in this session. Our topic today is all about journal metrics. My name is Lucius Kumbi. I'm a senior customer consultant for research intelligence, and I'm based in Cape Town. So before we get started on our topic of the day, I just want to remind you that this is a series of webinars, and we are almost halfway. I think we're halfway today, actually. All right, so the next session will be on the 26th of July, when we will be talking about making sense of open access. So please join us also for the subsequent webinars. And we will also make these we have already distributed these flyers, but if you don't have it, please reach out to us so that we can send it to you for you to have the registration link. So just in terms of housekeeping, as you noticed in the beginning, the session is being recorded. So everyone will receive a link to the recording. All the recorded webinars will also be added to our webpage. I've provided the web address here, but we will also send you these recordings as well as the slides before we make it available on our webpage. In terms of Q&A, please use the Q&A box or the chat box. I'll try to keep an eye, and Dineshri is also going to help me with that. So add your questions to the Q&A box as we go along. We've got a full agenda. I'll try to get through everything I want to share with you, but I'm sure there will be questions. So please pop them in there, and then we'll address them at the end of the session. So my mouse gets stuck. So the agenda today, how I'm going to present this is first talk about just one slide about what are journal metrics, and then we'll talk about the most common journal metrics, site score and impact factor. Then we'll talk about normalized journal metrics, the factors why we need normalized journal metrics, SJR and SNP then as examples there. We'll also talk about where to find journal metrics. The focus is going to be on Scopus, of course. So we'll show scopus.com, but we'll also refer you to the Scopus title list, which is available. Then how to use journal metrics, and then we'll end off with a quick demo and then the Q&A. So getting started with, what are journal metrics? So it's a quantitative method to evaluate the quality of journals. It's based on citation analysis, whereby the popularity of a journal is reflected by the number of citations related to the average article in that journal. So, and that is then based on the premise that a citation to a paper is a form of endorsement, and the number of citations then to which a particular paper attracts is therefore regarded as an indication of its importance. So inverted commas there. So various different methodologies and data sources are used for journal metrics. Of course, we can't focus on all of them. The focus is going to be on Scopus today, but I also wanted to, put it into context with other well-known journal metrics. What it's used for is to select journals to read or to publish in. So that's the basic use case then for journal metrics, and we'll discuss that in more detail. So to put journal metrics in context relative to other metrics in the world of research indicators, it is useful to consider that metrics are usually applied at different levels. For instance, researcher level, which then demonstrates the qualities of a researcher. So there we use usually document counts and H-index. There are also article level metrics, which is about the qualities of a specific article. So how many times it's been cited, the visibility of that article in social media, a whole range of metrics related to the article level. And then journal level, which tries to denote something about the journal quality. And there, the site score, journal impact factors, Camargo journal rank, source normalized impact per paper, which we will be discussing in more detail. So this is, in the world of metrics, research metrics, there can be often confusion between H index and site score and field rated citation impact and so on. So this is a useful sort of classification to keep it straight in your mind, to differentiate between researcher level metrics, article level metrics, and then metrics related on the journal level, which tells you something about the journal. So the impact factor, I'll start with the impact factor because it's the oldest and it's the most well-known journal metric. This metric was first introduced in the 1960s by Eugene Garfield, and the impact factor is published by Clarivate in the database Journal Citation Reports. It's not available in Scopus due to intellectual property rights that's on it. It's only available in the Journal Citation Reports. It shows the average number of citations of a published paper in a particular journal. So in order to calculate the impact factor of a journal, the number of citations received in a given year by the journal's papers are published within a specific number of years, then is divided by the number of these papers. There are two citation windows that are used. So there's the 2-year citation window and the 5-year citation window. However, the optimal publication window is still being debated. Is still debated. So there's no real conclusion on what is the ideal number of years that we should use to calculate journal metrics. But despite this, as a criticism, it's been mentioned as a criticism that the 2-year citation window is regarded as too short because some subject areas use older material more and they take time to cite new research. It takes longer. So in that case, the 2-year window would be too short. And then secondly, the inconsistency, there's an inconsistency in the impact factor in terms of the nominator and the denominator, where the nominator considers all citations while the denominator only selects specific document types, right? So things like news articles, editorials, letters to the editor, meeting abstracts, they are not counted. So despite these well-known criticisms of the impact factor, and some are also relevant for other journal metrics, it's a very popular and well-known journal metric. So as just to recount there, so, the methodology behind it is actually very simple. It takes all citations received by a journal in a particular year, so over a 2-year period, and then divided by the number of articles and reviews published in the 2 preceding years. So that's the methodology for the impact factor. So in Scopus, we have developed site score, which is it was first introduced in 2016 and then updated in 2020. This example here shows the site score for the South African Journal of Science, which is an example, which is 2.2, which means that over a 4-year period, articles are cited 2.2 times. So you can hear the methodology is slightly different. So just to show what the methodology looks like exactly, it's similar to the impact factor, but it covers a 4-year citation window. So site score the Site Score 2020. It's published every year. So the one that we currently using, the 2020 Site Score, counts the citations received in 2017 to 2020 to articles, reviews, conference papers, book chapters, and data papers. So those specific document types which were published in 2017 to 2020. And then it divides this by the number of publications in the same time frame, right? So it uses a 4-year citation window. The Site Score is calculated annually for all active publications in Scopus, all serial publications, that would be, as I mentioned, journals, book series, and conference proceedings. Only linked citations from publications in Scopus to publications in Scopus are counted. So this is also a little bit different than the journal impact factor, which also includes some unlinked citations, which is not within the database, right? So Scopus, it only counts the citations to the publications that are in Scopus as well. The Site Score calculation, both the numerator and the denominator are the same. So both in terms of the citations that are count and the documents that are count, we only use the articles, reviews, conference papers, data papers, and book chapters. Site Score also has other metrics. So it's basically a part of a set of metrics, which also includes the Site Score rank, which I will show a little bit more about. It's based on percentiles, and then the Site Score tracker, which is a predictive metric. It uses the citation counts subsequent to the citation publish date to indicate whether, what the publication trend looks like. So this is also the South African Journal of Science, which you will recall had a Site Score of 2.2. But if we count the citations subsequent to the cutoff period for the 2020 Site Score, we can see that the Site Score for next year, for 2021, not next year, but in terms of the Site Score date, will be 2.3. So this is an indication for this journal, the South African Journal of Science. Citations are increasing to this journal, and it has also improved the Site Score, right? So you can keep track of how the journal, what the journal quality looks like subsequent to the Site Score publication date. So the Site Score is published every year around this time. So anytime from now until the end of the end of May, or end of June. So it should be before the end of June, the new Site Score will be will be published. So look out for that. There's usually an announcement about that on the Scopus website as well. So Site Score percentiles, if you let me just, we'll go back to that previous slide, where the Site Score rank comes in, is we use percentiles to do that ranking. So for each of the journals, all of the journals are ranked in terms of their Site Score, and then percentiles are allocated to them, or they're divided into percentiles, right? So the Site Score percentiles then indicates the relative standing of the journal in that subject field, which is then based on the Site Score. And the percentile and ranking are relative to the specific subject area. Percentiles divide, how percentiles work basically is that it divides any distribution into 100 equal parts. So with Site Score percentiles, journals are also ranked on Site Score under each subject area that the journal covers. And the list is then divided into 100 equal parts, which each then represents a percentile. In this example of Journal of Experimental Botany, the journal covers agricultural and biological sciences, as well as biochemistry, genetics, and molecular biology. So in the agricultural subject area, the journal falls into the 97th percentile. In other words, it's amongst the top 3% of journals with the highest site score, right? So this cites, just see, I can't see the site score here, but it is in the, just to show how the percentiles then are calculated, and then also for within the biochemistry group of subject, it falls within the 89th percentile. So with other words, in the top 11% of journals in that subject area. Right. So percentiles are always relative to the subject area and gives us a ranking of the journal within that subject. Scopus also allows us to search for journals by quartiles. This is available in the, you can see on the right-hand side, this is available in the source table. And quartiles are allocated by ranking the journals in descending order from highest to lowest, based on the site score percentiles. So the percentiles are used to determine the quartiles. And that then also makes it subject normalized, basically. So it's also useful to distinguish the top quality journals within a specific subject area then. So quartile 1 journals are those that fall into the 99th to 75th percentile, and quartile 2, for example, fall within the 74th to the 50th percentile. So, and then it's also important to keep in mind that a journal can fall into different quartiles based on the percentile of the journal in the respective subject areas, right? So in this example mentioned here, you can have one serial that might be categorized in oncology with a site score of a site score percentile of 84th percentile, and then cancer research within a site score percentile of 73%. So these percentiles then equate to quartile 1 and quartile 2 respectively, because the percentiles are relative to a specific subject area. The same then is done for the quartiles. So talking about normalized metrics, there are several factors, of course, that influence bibliometrics. The first of them is to keep in mind that a subject matter is one of them, and then also the observation period, the publication type, and I will explain more about these, and then also the data source. So we're talking now specifically about Scopus and site score, and here it is important to keep in mind that only the journals that are indexed in Scopus are used to create the site score, and Scopus covers a specific collection representative of a specific regions. Where if you use another index where as a data source, that would make a difference on the journal metric. So the publication activity, for instance, in theoretical fields like mathematics and in engineering is lower than in the experimental fields like in life sciences. So subject matter matters a lot in terms of the citation culture that happens within that subject area. So in all of these cases, that makes it necessary to normalize the journal metric, or if you do not, like site score and impact factor are both not normalized. So they are intended to only compare journals within a specific subject area. So this is just an example here showing, how discipline then affects metrics. So you can see the frequency of publication here being that academics in the fields of neuroscience, life sciences, chemical engineering tend to publish more often than researchers In mathematics, also they have longer lists of references. And then thirdly, there's also a variation in the number of co-authors, for example. And all of this also influences the publication rate and the citation rate that will then differ across all the subject areas. Publication type, so the document type also affects the citation rate. So here you can see, for instance, that review articles are, tend to be or attract more citations than articles, research articles, for example. So here you can also, this will also impact the journal. If a journal publishes more review articles, for example, that might inflate the citation rate of that journal and also the related journal metric. And then the citation window, of course, because it takes time for publications to be cited. So you have to take that into account also when you work with any metrics that have that are related to citations. So this is just an overview of this data is maybe a bit old, but it's just an example to show how the different subject areas, the citation rates, how they are not the same across all these subject areas. So for all of these reasons, we have normalized metrics in Scopus. So in Scopus, we have the source normalized impact per paper. So this is also calculated for all the journals in Scopus. And very simply, what is done within the SNP calculation is it also it uses the citations to the publications or to the articles in the journal, but then it also divides it by the expected number of citations for the subject area that is covered within that journal. And in that way, it then normalizes the metric. So the source normalized impact per paper, very useful then to compare journals across different subject areas, and then the metric is then also standardized not standardized, but it has an average of 1.0. So I see I have another slide. Oh no, it's the same. So this is then shown here at the bottom. You can see the average, the impact per paper, which is 1.5, but the citation potential. So what would you expect those publications to be cited at that subject level? So for Inventions Mathematica, you have the actual impact per paper is 1.5, the citation potential 1.4, and the SNP metric then 3.8. Where Molecular Cell, you have the actual impact per paper 13.0. The citation potential is 3.2. So you can see these two journals, although their raw impact, their raw citation impact is very different. When normalized for their citation potential, they're actually very close to each other. So normalization, very important. And then with the added benefit of the SNP having a 1.0 average, which makes it useful to do comparisons. Then we have the Scamargo journal rank, which is a very interesting metric because it assumes that not all citations are equal. So citations are weighted by the ranking or the site score of the journal where the citation is coming from. So there also we have a scoring scale which has an average of 1, which also makes it then easier for us to do comparison. So the overall, the the calculation of this Imago journal rank is very similar to the page rank algorithm that's used in Google, but then with the added dimension that the citations are weighted by, where they are coming from. Right, so two very important normalized metrics that are made available in Scopus. So this is just an example to show where on the journal profile page in Scopus, the journals have a profile page where we make available the site score, the Imago journal rank, and the source normalized impact per paper. So you can see the position of these metrics on the paper. I'll also show this in the demo. So this is also interesting that the SJR here is below 1.0. So at 0.317 suggests that the citations to this journal, this is the South African Journal of Science, are not coming from very high-end level journals, and since 1.0 is, the average, where the SNP is a slightly different calculation. It just divides it by the citation potential per subject area, which is then very slightly then above what is expected for that subject area at 1.023. So this also shows, how you would use this SJR and SNP if it is important to measure journals in terms of, who is citing those journals, what other journals are citing that journals, is it high quality journals or lower quality journals citing that journals, and the SJR is a useful way of looking at that. Right, so where do you find the journal metrics in Scopus? So many different ways. I'm only focusing on Scopus here, but it is available in scopus.com, where we have the interface, of course. We have a title list, which is openly available on the internet. There's also a document search, which is useful to do, which leads you to journals. And then also it's possible to compare journals in Scopus. So just to give a coverage of this, it's going to be more interesting when I show it live, but just to have record of this. So in scopus.com, you will see, and in the top navigation, you've got search, sources, and SIBO. So sources is where you will find all journals, all the journals that are available within Scopus. So next up, there's also a Scopus source list. So also on this page showing you sources, which is the, I don't know what to call it, but the part of Scopus where we list all the journals. When you are on that page, you will see that there's an option there to download the Scopus source list, right? So you can download the list. It's an Excel spreadsheet, which is nice because then you can also do a lot of filtering. So you have one list that covers all the titles and the metrics, and then you have one that is only basically source-based, which also includes, for instance, the subject areas that they cover, right? So a second way to find a complete list of journals and their metrics in Scopus. This list, the titles on Scopus is also downloadable from the internet. So even if you don't have a subscription for Scopus, you can also download this list. And I've added the URL there, but you can also navigate to this from scopus.com using the content coverage link. This is also a very useful link in terms of seeing the new titles, because it takes time for a new title before it actually is profiled in Scopus. So it's a useful list to keep an eye on to see which are the new titles that have been added to Scopus, and also those that have gone through the re-evaluation process and that have been discontinued from Scopus. So finding, journals also, the Scopus search option also leads you to identifying journals and then their metrics by doing a document search in Scopus, and then in the refined panel it shows you, the summary view of where the publications are coming from, which journals, which are useful for our end in mind, which is, so how do we use the journal metrics? Is we want to have a way of differentiating between the quality of journals. So how do we use journal metrics? Well, to start off with, it's best, to say, how do we not use journal metrics? And and this is to claim a journal metric for yourself. So it's not it's not advised to say, for instance, I have an impact factor of above 10, for example. So a researcher cannot claim a journal metric for themselves because it tells something about the journal and not something about the researcher. And the logic behind that is, even when a researcher or an author manages to publish in a journal with a very high cite score, it doesn't mean that that publication or that specific article was cited at all, even. So journal metrics, definitely not to be claimed by authors to say something about their own competency. The best practice actually on journal metrics is guided by the DORA Declaration, which is the Declaration on Research Assessment. So this declaration was accepted in 2012 by a larger number of researchers at a conference, and subsequently many researchers and organizations have aligned with the DORA Declaration. Where the recommendation was first accepted, that not to use journal-based metrics such as journal impact factors, but also other journal metrics as a surrogate measure of the quality of an individual research, of an individual researcher or individual research articles, to assess an individual scientist's contribution, or in the hiring, promotion, or funding decisions about individual researchers. Right? So this is the best practice, is to follow the guides of the DORA Declaration, or just DORA. So from here, let me just do a quick demo. Let me navigate to my browser. Right. So first up, as I showed in the slides, this is the Scopus homepage, and if you navigate to sources, right? So the blocks in the middle or central on the page help you to find your documents. So just to do normal literature searches to find different types of documents, or you can find authors, you can also find affiliations, but on the upper menu, you will find sources, right? And if you click on the sources page, this is then where you get that list of all the journals that are available in Scopus with all of their metrics then, right? So you'll see 43.123 journals that are indexed in Scopus. These are the inactive and the active journals, right? We have 25,500 active journals, but we also, when journals are discontinued, so they cease to exist, for example, we keep the information about that journal in Scopus for, retrospectively. So just if this number confuses you, this is active and inactive journals. So to find a journal, you have different options. You can use the subject, the title, the publisher, or the ISSN. Subject, if I just demonstrate the subject area. So for instance, there's a drop down and you can scroll down and you can search, for example, say, where I was thinking of computer science, say artificial intelligence, or you can select computer science, artificial intelligence, and then you will get a list of the journals that relate to computer science, and specifically in the subdiscipline. So you can look on a subject level, but also subdiscipline level. Right. So here you have 287 journals, and on the left-hand side, there's a refined panel where you can then select whether you only want open access journals, where you will be able to access the full text of the journals automatically. There's also site score highest quartile, so you can select if you only want to see the computer science journal that are, the top 25% according to site score. So your top journals, you can select the first quartile. You can also filter by journals, books, series, conference proceedings, and trade publications. So all of these are serial publications, but if you only want to have academic journals, for example, you can select that, apply, and your list will be reduced. And then from this, you can select the journal. So right on this source page already, you will see what the site score of the journal is. It's in a descending order from highest to lowest. It also gives you the percentile of that journal and the ranking of the journal within the subject area that it covers. Right. So the logic here being also that the journals, so the highest percentile is shown where journals are linked to more than one subject areas, the highest, the subject area where the journal performs the highest is indicated here. And then some raw data in terms of the actual number of citations, the actual number of documents that the journal publishes, the percentage of articles in that journal that is cited, as well as information then also about the SNP, the SJR, and the publisher. If you then want to see more information on any of these journals, so I'll just select soft robotics as an example. Looks like I selected the wrong one. Let's do pattern recognition. Right, so sorry about that. I'm not sure why that was a glitch. Right, so here, this is an example of a journal profile page. It provides the source details, right? So it gives, this is incidentally an Elsevier journal. I just picked randomly, but it shows the coverage here, which is important here because this is also an indication of whether the journal is active or non-active. So this is to present, so this is an active journal, the publisher, the subject areas covered by the journal, and then the metrics, right? So the site score then being 15.7, which is the number of citations over 4 years divided by the number of documents published over 4 years. So very, basic calculation, very easy to remember. Also, it's an average number of citations that articles receive over a 4-year period. Then you've got the SJR and you've got the SNP. So in terms of other journals within the same subject area, this journal is getting a high number of citations. The SJR indicates that the article, so it's 1.4, it's above the world average, but in comparison to the SNP, it seems like the citations are not coming from journals that have a much higher site score. So it's quite a good peer journal. So it's coming from peer journals with more or less the same site score. Right, so then it gives you an overview of, the calculation, the site score tracker, the site score rank also. So this journal is their number 12 of 389 journals within computer science focusing on software. It's number 4 in signal processing. It's number 9th by site score in terms of artificial intelligence. So a very nice overview then of how the metric is calculated, and then also the rank of the journal in each of the subject areas. Right, the site score tracker here indicating a slight decline maybe because the new site score will be published very soon, and the site score at the moment since the 2020 cutoff until now has slightly declined from 15.7 to 15.3. Right, so this is how you look at this is to see whether your journal quality is increasing or whether it's decreasing. Right, so this is from the sources link, all the information that you can find about. There's more actually. So there's more detail where you actually see the complete ranking of journals within their subject areas. So you can select which category, and then you also get access to the actual content coverage. And you can see the citation view. So here you can see how each of the, I hope I haven't selected one that's too big now, but you can see article by article how the citations were added, right? So let me just look at the descending citation count by descending, because the 2022 publications wouldn't have been cited yet, so it's not useful to look at that. But here you can see if you select the content coverage and then the citation analysis, you can see how it was. So citations, so there was a very highly cited publication up to 2022. You can see how many citations and where those citations are coming from. So 14 for edge computing enabled video segmentation. It's really that you would go into that kind of detail unless it is your own publication and you want to see how it was cited. Then going back just to see how citations, how to find journals and the relating metrics then from the perspective of doing a literature search and then identifying journals in which you would like to, which you might consider in which to publish, right? So I think I actually missed a slide there that I wanted to cover as well in terms of that specifically. Right, so here we can do a search. So just a very simple one. So the topic is Bitcoin, and we want to see which journals are researchers publishing in terms of this topic, right? So it's a large number. I didn't refine the topic, of course. If you scroll down in the refine panel, you'll see, sorry for all of the scrolling, but here is a summary view then of the journals that are relevant for the subject area with the highest number of publications then in lecture notes in computer science. The second highest volume of publications were in finance research letters, followed by ACM International Conference Proceedings and series. So another way of looking at this, sorry for scrolling, is to analyze search results. I'm showing this now from the perspective of trying to identify relevant journals in which to publish. So scrolling down, there's an option documents per year by source, and it gives us that information that we saw in the refined panel, but in a more visualized way. So in this graph, just showing the number of publications so the number of documents that were published in these journals. So we have lecture notes. You can see the spread of when the publications were added. Then we have a second one, finance research letters, right? So this is just a graphical representation of what we see on the left-hand side, showing in terms of volume, which of the journals are publishing articles that relate to Bitcoin. To go a step further and how to use then the journal metrics in distinguishing between these 5 journals that have been highlighted or selected here, which of these 5 journals have the highest site score? We can use the compare sources and view the site score, and you can use the other metrics as well. Right. So now the distribution is not based on the volume of articles related to Bitcoin, but it shows the quality of, it shows the site score of the journal, right? So here we see then that the journal that had the highest volume was the lecture notes in computer science, if I recall now, but actually IEEE Access has the highest quality in terms of the highest, or is the highest quality journal or site score in this case, but it is being exceeded here by finance research letters in the last year, or in 2020 it was surpassed by finance research letters. So it has a higher site score since 2020. So by clicking on that compare journals, it will show you not the volume of publications, but then the actual quality of the journals in which those publications on Bitcoin were published. Right, so I just want to check back on my slides because there was a slide that I wanted to share. Oh my gosh. Yes, let me get back to the slide. So just sharing my slides again. I didn't add any notes here. So this is just a reminder of, you know, the compare journal functionality. And where this comes into the whole process is after you have done your, or after you've created your shortlist. So you go through all the steps to identify journals in which to publish. Is usually where you start with creating a shortlist based on senior or peer recommendation, or also looking at the journals that you have referenced yourself. So in your study that you want to, or in your research results that you want to publish, you have referenced material. So that reference list is a very good indication of where you might want to publish your own manuscript. So starting with your peer recommendations or your supervisor recommendations, create that shortlist. And then you study the aims and the scope of those publications. Also the type of manuscripts that they accept. How wide is their geographic reach? How discoverable are they? Is it indexed in Scopus, for example? What type of peer review is being, what is the rejection rate? So you go through all of those steps, and then you create your shortlist. And once you have your shortlist, then it gets to the point of where you compare the journals in terms of the quality as well. So working only with your shortlist then. So it's not recommended to start with doing an analysis on what is, you know, the best journals within a field. That is not, that should not be the dominant way of looking at where you should publish. But it's very useful once you have a shortlist and you want to differentiate in your shortlist about which are the top journals, then to bring in your journal metrics like site score or SNP or SJR to make that differentiation. So I hope that that is useful. The focus here was not in terms of how to identify journals in which to publish. It was on journal metrics itself. But I just wanted to also add in here, you know, in the sequence of identifying journals where to publish, where you would use the journal metrics. Right, so with that, I've come to the end of my slides. I hope that was useful, and if you have any questions, I'd like to hear from you. I didn't notice any specific. Let me see in the chat.
Yeah, hi, there's only one question. If in the Scopus coverage years is not mentioned to present, it means that it has been permanently discontinued? If yes, is it reversible?
Yes, so it's actually, thanks for that question. It's actually it's a very useful question, because it is not very consistent in Scopus in the sense that sometimes the coverage is shown, say, from one date to another date. So it would be from, you know, 2010 until 2022, which then also, or it could be from 2010 until present. It is only when it says specifically and clearly that the journal has been discontinued that it is discontinued. Otherwise, you can almost assume that the journal, or you can assume that the journal is active, right? So look out for that discontinued. If it doesn't say discontinued, the assumption is that it is active. It's just there's a little bit of an inconsistency in terms of using the actual word present, or using the most current date that we've received articles from that publisher or from that journal.
Thanks, Lucia. I just want to comment on another question that came through about the recordings for the series. We are going to upload it to the Elsevier Africa YouTube channel, and the link that I've now shared in chat. There's a slight delay with the recordings, but it will be available there. And you will be emailed a link to download your certificate after the session. Thank you.
Are there any other? Right, so all of the, as Dineshri mentioned, all of the workshops will be, all the recordings will be made available on that website. You can always just send us an email as well to share the links with you. Okay, there's a hand that has been raised. So let's see if we can. So, would you like to ask a question? I've unmuted you, Peter. Would you like to ask a question?
Yes, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Sure, go ahead.
Can you hear me from that?
You are breaking up a little bit. Would you like to type your question maybe? Or if you go ahead, we'll try to make out what you're trying to ask.
Mine is about getting access to Scopus, because some of our institutions have access.
Sorry, Peter, no, we can't hear you well enough. Do you mind just adding your question to the chat or to the Q&A? We'd really like to answer your question.
It's all right, I'll do that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. So while we're waiting for Peter to type, Abdel Karim, would you like to ask your question? Abdel Karim, I've unmuted you. Would you like to ask your question? You just have to also unmute your own mic.
Yeah, I'm with.
Okay.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah,
Okay.
we receive every day many emails from the predatory journals.
Yes.
What how the Scopus can combat those journals, because they confusing new people, new researchers in this field.
Yes, thanks very much. Yes, that's a real problem. So in Scopus, the journals that we index in Scopus all go through a selection criteria process, right? So they have to comply with specific criteria, and this is also evaluated by an external group of editors, so the Content Selection and Advisory Board. The journals are then also re-evaluated every year. So if we pick up anything, where the journal is underperforming, or we get information, to check that the journal might be predatory, which shouldn't happen because they go through the selection process in the first time. Then it's re-evaluated, and if it doesn't comply with the Scopus selection criteria, then the journal is discontinued, right? So discontinued in Scopus means two things. It means that the journal has been evaluated. It doesn't meet our requirements anymore, but it could also mean that the journal has just ceased to exist, right? So if you can advise to your journals or to your researchers, this is one, if they use Scopus, they don't have to be afraid that there will be predatory journals amongst them, right? So this is one way of doing this. We also have had quite a number of webinars where we point out some of the characteristics of journals in terms of how you can, identify predatory journals. So yes, unfortunately, there's not much more than we can do than just to make sure that the journals that are in Scopus can be trusted. There are, as you saw, there are more than 40,000 journals in Scopus. All of these can be trusted. I hope that helps to answer your question, but there's nothing further. We can't eliminate them, unfortunately.
Thank you.
So thank you also there for sharing a list of predatory journals. So this is not an Elsevier or Scopus list, but it might be useful for you. So thanks for sharing that. Any other questions? So Peter, if there's a question about access to Scopus, so that would depend a lot on whether your institution has a subscription to Scopus, so you could reach out to us about that. We will add our contact information when we send you the link to the recording and the slides. Okay, if you want to access Scopus journals outside of institutional link, I'm not sure whether you're talking there about whether you have a subscription or not. So the actual list of Scopus journals are available freely on the internet. You can actually just Google Scopus title list and you'll find that, but it will just give you a list of journals. To get access to the content, the indexed content, you will need a subscription to Scopus, and we can also activate remote access to that. But firstly based then on a subscription. Any other questions? I see we have reached the top of the hour. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. I really hope this was useful for you. We will be sharing all the information with you. If you think of anything afterwards that you would like to ask, please reach out to us, and we will try to answer your question as best we can. But for now, thank you very much. And see you again next time when we talk about open access. Thanks, everyone, and bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.